Born to Nigerian parents and sent away at 6 weeks old to a white foster parent in Tilbury, East Sussex, Adewale Akinnuoye-Agbaje grew up to be a violent teenager, defending himself against the racist local skinhead gang that ran the streets. They made life miserable for anyone who had any shade of black in their skin. A moment later, he became a skinhead. Yeah, go figure. He not only joined the gang, but also adopted their racist attitudes and fought alongside them. Let's backtrack a bit to how we got here. We are not only going to tell Akinnuoye-Agbaje's story, but also reflect the story of about 10,000 African children. Among them are notable figures and celebrities who were raised in white foster care homes, and how their struggle with identity crises, self-hate, lack of stability and community, and abrupt lifestyle changes shaped their lives. But first, a brief backstory to lay the foundation to this part of the British foster care system many don't know about. And by the end of this video, hopefully, you would have learned a bit more on dynamics of parenting, racism, and society. The 1950s to the 60s post-colonial era saw British administrators leave West Africa and relinquish power to its citizens. But there was one problem. There were few skilled leaders left to run the government. Many West Africans got opportunities to study and work in Britain. Some went to Britain to study how to manage the economy back home, but there was another problem. As much as this was the post-colonial era and a new phase for West African countries like Nigeria and Ghana, this was also the post-World War II era and an unfavorable time in Britain. Many West Africans were faced with crises related to housing and employment. The post-war environment also brought increased difficulty for Africans to fit in and form relationships. So, the men who went to study were advised to bring their wives and children along. While this was solving one problem, it was opening another. The majority of the Africans who moved to Britain didn't have time to take care of the children they gave birth to. So, it became common to send their babies to private foster homes belonging to white families in rural England. In 1955, the first advert seeking foster care for an African baby appeared in Nursery World's issue. This continued between the 1950s and 1990s. The media started calling the practice farming. The name came from the Victorian era disapproved baby farming, often used to describe the placement of children with unqualified carers. By 1998, the African Advisory Service estimated that up to 9,000 West African children were handed over to private foster care in Britain. Foster families could make as much as €3 per week, which is equivalent to €60 today. A huge number of these private foster carers were not registered and thereby invisible to the authorities. Many did not want to reveal that they were earning an income. So, some places in London had people who acted as middlemen for the private foster care arrangements. Someone in need of foster care for their children will contact them, then they will connect the person to a private foster family. Many weren't vetted, authorized, or regulated by any local authorities or councils, and this bettered the experiences and emotional traumas of tens of thousands of West Africans who were farmed and shuffled between 2 or 3 homes. This included popular figures like entrepreneur Gina Yasher, Olympian Chris Akabusi, footballers John and his brother Justin Fashanu, and musicians Rick Flo and Seal. Seal, born in 1967, told The Guardian he was raised by, quote-unquote, a bit of a patchwork family. Nobel Prize winner Wole Soyinka also privately fostered his first child while a student in 1950s Leeds. Bringing together the stories of over 10,000 farmed African children born between the 1950s and 1990s, we are going to tell you the stories of the dark side of Britain's foster homes from the lens of every party involved. It's saddening, it's gut-wrenching, but please, let's stick together till the end. And by the way, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to get more engaging, truth-revealing videos such as this. Think of Tony as he held the Nursery World magazine. Their advert was the third one in the second column. He turned back to face Bola and asked if they were doing the right thing. He and Bola had met at the university and married. He was studying to be a lawyer and she was studying to be a midwife. She also worked in a hair salon to support them financially, so it was hard when they had their first child. Bola wondered why Tony was suddenly acting brand new, like they didn't also send their son, Timmy, to a foster home. She became impatient. Tony was uneasy and said he had a bad feeling about it. He reminded Bola that they sent Timmy away when he was 5 months old. Tenny was barely up to 2 months old. Bola angrily said he felt that way because he wasn't the one nurturing them. She assured him that Tenny would do fine, like her brother. Everyone around them was sending their children to private foster homes. It was the little sacrifice they had to pay to adapt to the harsh life they lived. She convinced Tony that they were doing the right thing, sending their children to the white woman. She would raise them, put them in superior schools, and they would speak good English like her sister's children. Think of Grace, who got connected to a family who put out an advert in need of foster care. They came to drop Tenny in Lincolnshire and went back to London. It wasn't her first experience with an African baby. She didn't have any child of her own and Laurie was a truck driver, so this was a way to keep herself busy and earn a little income. Despite being paid little, Grace raised Tenny with love, buying special oils for her hair and body, teaching her about her heritage and sometimes making West African dishes. It seemed like she was doing the right thing until Tenny started questioning why she was treated differently from the other foster children. She simply wanted the regular things and assimilated into the Western way of living. She knew Tenny would return to her parents as the arrangement was temporary, but she could not deny her attachment with Tenny. 9-year-old Tenny went to spend Christmas in London as requested by her birth parents, and Grace got a call from Bola. Bola thanked Grace for her service and said they were ready to take Tenny home. Tenny was not coming back. Grace did not realize that tears were pouring down her cheeks. She pleaded with Bola to let Tenny come to pack her things, but Bola refused. She later spoke to Tenny and told her that they were trying to take her away. When Tenny begged and asked Grace to promise she wouldn't let that happen, Grace's heart broke further and she wept. Tenny watched as her parents acted like everything was normal, as if they had not just uprooted her from her childhood. 5 months later, after 10th year birthday, her birth father promised to take her back to Nigeria to know her roots. She was terrified. In Nigeria, she felt out of place. She was mocked for how she spoke and her inability to speak her native language. The living experience was torture and she cried every night for 2 weeks. One day at a family function, her aunt shouted at her asking why she was crying and what was so bad about them. She accused Tenny of not liking and wanting to stay with them. She reminded Tenny that their kind was not wanted over there and that Nigeria was also her home. Tenny said she didn't ask to be brought to Nigeria and begged to go back home. Her birth mother shouted frustratingly that Nigeria was her home. Tenny later left Nigeria but didn't return home to Lincolnshire. She struggled to fit in with her black friends in London as they claimed she was too white. She kept in touch with her foster parents and visited them from time to time till they passed away. Then there was David, who unlike Tenny had a rough experience with his foster parents. They had many foster children in the house, so there was no room for individual attention, making David to be raised on survival. They didn't know how to take care of him properly, leaving his skin ashy and his hair unkempt and tangled. They dismissed his reports of the racial attacks he was getting in the community in Tilbury. His foster mother told him to ignore the racism, that it was nothing. One day, he was chased out of town by a gang of racist adults. They told him to go back to Africa. When he opened up to his foster father hit his chest and told him to fight for himself. He took the advice seriously and joined a street gang to self-protect. When a child wants to be accepted, he will do anything. His foster mother was worried about his violence and reported to his birth parents, who moved him into a boarding school in East London. With his experience with gangs and violence, he blended with the street guys in the school. He tried to act tough, but he knew deep down that he didn't fit in. The school environment in East London was entirely different from what he was used to in Tilbury. He would sometimes drown his pain with alcohol. Now, think of Sade, who heard her foster mother arguing with her birth mother when she was 6. She didn't hear clearly but knew it had to do with her birth mother not visiting. This was the first time her birth mother had come to see her since she dropped her off in Plymouth. When she was 10, she worried something was wrong with her as her birth mother hadn't come to pick her up while the other foster children had left. She wasn't even getting adopted. Her foster mother later broke the news to her that her mother didn't want anything to do with her and wasn't reachable. Her foster parents finally decided to adopt her. She was peeping through the back door when she heard her neighbor ask her foster father if they had finally taken the black kid. She felt like an embarrassment. She was later sexually assaulted by the same neighbor, unknown to her parents. She was so sad and depressed throughout her childhood that she tried to kill herself once. She moved to Nigeria when she was 22, but returned to Britain after 1 year due to her inability to blend in and thrive. Her birth mother later reached out and they reconciled, but the relationship between them was non-existent. The initial intention of the West African parents was to make their children benefit from superior education and obtain mannerisms of the English lifestyle as the parents focused on schooling and working. How do you reconcile this to the aftermath of broken, confused, and self-hating children from the outcome of farming? As many of these children, now middle-aged adults, told their stories, they revealed that showing up out of the blue to take them away from the home they've known all their lives to a home the African parents thought they created in advance felt nothing less than kidnap. Advantages thought to be given to the children instead opened up a chasm between them and their birth parents. Some of the children still struggle with residual trauma. To the general public, baby farming is a secret from Britain's recent history, and the story has gone largely unreported for decades because there was no one to hold to account. However, its gradual reveal is unfolding little by little. Farm children are beginning to open up to speak about it, like actor Adewale Akinnuoye-Agbaje, who released his directorial debut, Farming, and writer-director Shola Mo, who released his semi-autobiographical feature, The Last Tree. Many African parents risked losing their children to another family and culture due to custody battles that ensued over the years of farming. Judges often ruled in the child's best interest. Many of these parents have held on to their unwillingness to accept responsibility for what they had done to their children. As children wanted explanations and apologies, parents wanted understanding and forgiveness without asking for it. Who do you think should be held accountable for the massive farming experiences and outcomes? The authorities, the African parents, or white foster parents? What part of each player's reasons do you think are justifiable? Let's hear your thoughts in the comment section. And please, don't forget to subscribe for more educational videos such as this. Like and share the video to your friends and families as well. And on that note, I'll be catching you on the next one. Cheers, guys.